All right, guys, Sam back with you here to round it out here as we're doing a traditional Thursday. Last up by request from our members is look at Coke. Now, Coke is kind of some interesting things here. So Coke they just had earnings yesterday. All right, so we're getting the response. The market has responded to that favorably. Now I'm working, we got a lot of history with Coke here. I'm going back to the 2009 low here, which I have if you went out to a weekly, I have that as the 4 low. We had sort of an unusual ABC, came down here in 5. I have the 2009 as a 4 low, so we can work off of that moving higher. So a little tricky. So it looked pretty solid 1, 2. Now it becomes a question of where's the third. So I approached it this way. So looking here, just using our alternate tools, if I take the length of the 1, project from the 2, and just pulling it over. Get it right on there. Well, here's your high probability point, right? But the subdivision here didn't work as well. So my first thought was put the 3 here and 4, 5, but then as we keep going, I think this actually plays better. So here's that zone. Ultimately, I think we get it here because of this pattern here. We finish, you can see a 1, 2, 3, 4 back, and we essentially double top here for that 5 to complete this 4 into the 5 of that third. That looks, and so this being the 3 of the lower degree, that's what I think plays better. So ultimately we get to the 2. Well, if we're calling this our third 4, now we're in the 5th, we're up challenging. Well, here's the 2, 6, 1, 8 up here. Now we've got a couple of the things that we have to deal with here. So I think that's a reasonable count. Right? Some of you might disagree, but I think that's, we certainly don't violate any Elliott rules here, and the subdivision works. Now you do have this. I did check this here. So if this is playing as our 1 and our 2 here, we get just beyond 100% here, and looks like we finished just fine. So we get the extension in the 1, 2, 3. So we stay. So you got to dig out a very small 1, 2 there to get a 3, 4, 5 to give us the impulse that we need in the third. And then in white here, we've got a nice 3, 4, 5. So it looks like we're finishing with an ending diagonal, which is not uncommon. We get sort of a natural channel here. There's 2 ways you could do it. So one thought is you work off of the highs. Is that seems to fit better. So if I do it that way and then come down here to these lows, I get the channel that way. And that's nothing wrong with that. So others would tell you, well, you're working if you do it this way. So if we took the 2 to the 4 and then we come up this way, you work from the 3. Either one, it's just, I might check them both. But what I'm really looking for is projection. Now what I do notice here is if I take the length of the proposed 1 and drop down to the proposed 2, 1 is longer than 3. So I've got to mark this here as a tell, as a warning, because I can't have 3 be the shortest. So what I'm doing is taking the length of 3 and projecting from the 4. Right, so if I get here, now I've got to change the count. I have it wrong because that would make 3 the shortest count. As long as we hold below that here, this is a potential technical pivot here that could finish the whole thing. It's possible. Right now, if that goes higher, then we would likely have to just continue on with the idea that we had a diagonal here, and then maybe we're ending up doing it this way. This becomes the 1, so we get an ABC into the 1, 2. Now that requires that we stay with that diagonal format, so we're going to need a big push here in the 3 in an ABC format. So there's a way to deal with that, but right now there's no reason to go there just yet. Right? So right now I can still play this as 3, 4, and potentially the 5 going in. All right, so here would be the tell that needs to be relabeled. So right here. Now if we think about potential fibrillate, well, I got the wrong one up here. So I've got my wolf range on. So let me get back to traditional measured. Do I have it? Yeah. Okay. So if I go, remember in a diagonal, we want to see a technical pivot between the start of the 1 through the pivot of the third. So am I technical here? Well, not bad. It's not to the tick on the 618. You'd like to see it right at the 50. So, this could have been a little pre-earnings jitter, but whatever, for whatever reason here we have a valid 4 here. We have a contender for the 4. Now what's problematic here is if this is going to get to target, it's going to go beyond that warning line where 3 would become the shortest. So we got to pay attention to that. So it's just a natural thing to just put an alert there. Oh, where's the, all right? Well, you get the idea. We want to add an alert there. I thought I had it right there. Add alert. There we go. All right, so I want to be notified if that gets up and takes that out, then this has to be relabeled. Let's get this stuff off. All right, so that's a natural target. Now, if it's going to keep going, we've got to relabel the whole thing because we've got a contender up here for much higher prices relative to the much larger degree that I was working off on the weekly. So I have a look on the weekly, and it's you really have to go to log scale to be able to see the separation of waves. So here, again, working off of this 2009 low, it would suggest that we're approaching some sort of a top. And we can do a couple other things. So from the Elliott count, we've got a potential finishing count and a warning level here where we know we have to relabel this and rethink it. Now, one thing that we might look at here is if so we can do some measuring here in terms of its typical ending points for a wave 5. So the length of the 1 projected from the 4, well, 100% is very common, 1272. If we're going to go beyond that, now remember, right, if we take this out, this whole thing has to be relabeled. But if we're going to continue to carry on here and hit some of these upper targets, then as I said, we'll have to relabel here, and this will likely become a 1-2, and we'll see what kind of shape that takes, or we may have to relabel the whole thing. But as of right now, this would be the critical tell if we're going to push beyond that. Not that that's necessarily a short, that's not what I'm implying, but that's a warning line. Just if we're labeling it this way, we've got to rethink that count. All right, so the other thing, of course, we could just put some trend lines on that. That seems to be, now this, you go here, a lot of times these are revisited. Right, so we come up, now it's resistance, so maybe that's there as support, and then you might draw a couple of these looking for potential tells and warning signs that if we're starting to come down, we got to be conscious of that and be aware of, do we have a potential trend change? If we were going to pivot up here, we'd have a natural point to start looking for retracement. So just hypothetically, if I pull from my low here to, if we're going to complete in 5, well then this area down here, well, I can do it this way. So we can look at this prior resistance up here, maybe the support. So if we grab from that swing low, if we've got a completed 5-wave structure, if we're going to go up here and complete there, well, here this would be a natural place that we'd be looking. We know we'd look for anything in this range here. So we've got this nice little low volume node here. So if that's going to come down, that's a reasonable place to be looking. So what is that? 35, call it, would be a place to start looking. But right now, we're still just moving higher. So there's no reason. There really is not a trade here. I wouldn't be a buyer here as we approach all-time highs. This was the last opportunity to be a buyer, but wasn't perfectly technical. Now, the one other thing I will show you here is, if it's too steep for a pitchfork, well, we did have, so if I look here at this 1 here to the 2, well, so there's our 80%, right? So that's realized. You could go to a modifier here. Excuse me. So if we went to the shift, now that's not bad, right? As you see here, as we're just tagging it. So look how that median line has been in effect here. So fairly decent framing. I could put on and get that high. I can get the 2 on there. See how that helps us with some of that framing. So I'll pull some of this stuff up just to declutter the chart. So it looks like that's framed the market rather nicely. So here we get the upper parallel. Here's the 200 back to the lower parallel. If we're going to go back up and tag this, remember this means we have to relabel and rethink the count. If we're going to go back up to that level, which certainly looks like a contender. So if we're going to go up and get that here, well, that again, as I've said, we'd have to change the count. But that would be a high-class problem. Particularly if you're a bull, that implies much higher prices. But right now, that looks like that's framed the market rather nicely. Now, the other thing that I'll do when I don't have a really solid Oh, the market geometry, I'm having to modify a little bit. I'll go to the wolf range and see if I can range the market and bring in some Gann tools here, since I'm looking at equities on a daily chart. That's a natural place to go. So let me bring up the wolf set. I did notice this. So when we're working trying to range the market, we're just trying to identify that first significant range. So if I just take the logical, if I just go to the wave one high here, or the first pivot that I get here. So here's the swing I'm measuring. Here's my first 50, second 50. Note what happens here. Right, and as we continue, so are we going up to the negative 200? Again, that would be very consistent with what we were just projecting for some of those upper targets, although we'd be relabeling here, again, as I've reminded you a couple of times. So when you see something like that, where we have good range, where like that is not accidental, right? That's doubling of the initial range. So that tells me that we've got a good playing field. How about I say it that way? We've got a good playing field for some Gann tools. So if I lock the scale here, I would want to get, now let's see, did I do it? Let me get that autoed and let me lock it in. So let's lock the scale. So I would go to my Gann square. Since I've got this initial range, so when in that thinking of squaring of price and time, so if I come right here and put it on that. So do you see what I get here? So here's the, I've shown this a few times, but just so you guys get this idea, here's the square. We're squaring price and time. Right, here's the 100% expansion, right, and then the minus 50 and potentially going higher. So, all right, that's why the 45 cuts that right on the corner. You see how that has been sort of the trend of the market as we've gone up here and now started to roll over. Are we going to continue on? Well, natural support here, you can see how that's kicked in. So it's the range, the doubling of the range. So things to pay attention to now, if this were going to keep going, if we were going to carry on with that doubling of the range by going up here, now I get a new range of the market. Right, so here's the range, here's the doubling of the range. So if I were to carry this up, well, actually we don't need to because we're not beyond that. So then we look at where our target is up here. And we say, well, that fits in rather nicely. If that's going to go up here, now we have to deal with the fact that this would make third the shortest. So we got to maybe perhaps rethink some of this. But that's an area of interest, right? If we're going to go up there, that would be a perfect. So we'd be at the negative 50 here from the initial squaring of the market. Well, actually, we'd be. Let me bring this back to our original range. All right, so we'd be at the negative 200. So that natural target here for us, so we're sitting here at 47, that would put us up at 52. As we hit that, again, that squaring, you see how we're squaring price and time. As we hit that corner, that would be a point of interest if we're going to get up there. So let me get this back squared. Are we still? Yeah, no, you got to lock it. So if you hit auto, you got to relock that scale. So it seems to be a fairly good example. So this would be natural if we're going to come down and get any sort of a pullback. We've got some natural support here. As you can see here, this would be a natural level of support. If we're going to break lower, if we get through that, I want arrow. If we're going to come down, then here, this little low volume node here, and the prior resistance would be a natural target. And then we have the upsloping Gann angle here to suggest that that would be a natural point for a retracement, which would take us back to that 35, 36 zone. So just another way to approach the market, but when you see that kind of perfect squaring, then all right, that's good sign that perhaps the Gann tools will be effective and will give us some good targets. All right, guys, so that's what I see there. There's not really a trade to make here until we get either a retracement or we see some sort of reaction up here, and either way, it sets up a buy down here in this 36 zone. It looks like 52 is the next target. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. All right, just a reminder. All right, you want to learn more about what we're doing, what we're teaching, always visit us over on our website. That's tradedevils.com. Links below the website. We've got the free member or free public Discord, I should say it that way. But we engage with people over there. That's a way to just get a feel for what we're doing and engage with some of my coaches, senseis, as we call them. All right, so you can always contact us if you have any questions through the website or on Twitter or YouTube. We read what you send us. Okay, guys, that's it for today.